Give me a minute, etc., etc. Time is relative. Cheers to everyone in the chat. Calm down. Yeah.
It's the off-season acoustic version.
Yes, this is the acoustic version of the intro. So we're having some technical issues with the intro. But hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, although we've done zero zitch nada forever. So I can't blame you if you're not on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As we have not really had a chat since halfway through the Stanley Cup playoffs due to, just being busy, kind of in this midst of off season, watching the Stanley Cup finals, but we kind of just waiting for everything to kind of end. But we're here. We're now kind of in this off season mode. It's June 20th as of the recording live of this podcast. So we are 11 days away from free agency. We are a week or so away from the NHL draft. And there's lots of questions to talk about. And in Calgary right now, hello, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's it's rainy in Calgary. It sort of feels more like hockey season than it usually does this time of year with the cold weather and 10 degrees out. But we've sat, like you said, it's been a while since we've both done a show and we've sat idle, but I love this time of year as we get ready for the draft and look ahead to the free agency. It's a fun time to be a hockey fan again.
Yes, for sure. It's sort of that waiting period, especially for teams that don't make the playoffs since the end kind of April till now, where you're watching everybody else and sort of in a little bit of envy that your team isn't in the playoffs. And it's, and a little rougher for Flames fans in some ways because, the Edmonton Oilers are getting to the final, the rivals from up north. And not only that, you see former Flame Matthew Tkachuk dancing to Pink Pony Club in the Panther dressing room, and former Flame Sam Bennett, who gets the Conn Smythe Trophy. Could you have imagined Sam Bennett? Remember back in 2015, Dan, 18-year-old Sam Bennett, all over that Calgary-Vancouver series, now getting a Conn Smythe Award for 13 of 15 goals on the road, and the Panthers win their second straight Stanley Cup, buoyed by two former Flames, Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk. It's especially hard for Flames fans, I think, in some ways. I guess in some ways, I think a lot of people take solace in the fact that at least it's two former Flames that are knocking off the hated rival of the Oilers. But there's also, isn't there a part of you that's like, damn, why is that not us?
Sure, but I think it's not like the Flames were out early. The Flames were out of the playoffs. We knew this year they were not going to go that far. It's not like it was that bitter, we lost in 7 games in round 3 or something. So yeah, I think everybody wants it to be their team, but we know that now's not the Flames' time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people understand that in a lot of ways, and
they'll get there. It's just not their time right now.
Yeah. Well, Bob Stofford wanted to remind everybody this week, a couple of days ago, that the Oilers have won 9 playoff series since 2022, and the Flames have won 6 since in 35. But I wanted to talk a little bit. Well, we're going to Matt on Sunday. We're going to do the kind of the draft preview stuff, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time with Matt because he follows the Florida Panthers to get their perspective. But I thought we'd start with the conversation around the Oilers and the Flames, and particularly talk about Connor McDavid's kind of surprising. People were a little surprised at the comments that came out of the end of season press conference from the players yesterday, when, of course, on July 1st is when Connor McDavid can start negotiating his new contract for the Oilers. And I think everybody in Oilerland was assuming that it would be as easy as flipping a steak for Lauren on the grill. But Connor McDavid did not make this one easy. That being said, heard around the world. He said he loved the organization, but he wanted to see a plan that they were going to be winning on a consistent basis. And he kind of he laid a little bit of the hammer down. And now some people were a little bit like, wait a minute, Connor, this is not, you shouldn't really be saying this. Say, I love the organization and live happily ever after. But quite honestly, Dan, as much as Bob Stauffer wanted to tweet that the Oilers have had 9 playoff wins in 3 seasons, I think we should remind everybody that since 2006, when they went to the final against the Carolina Hurricanes, they had 1 playoff series win, which was against the Anaheim Ducks. And they had the first pick of Connor McDavid. They had the first pick of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Nail Yakupov, Taylor Hall. Not only that, Darnell Nurse, a top 10 pick. Leon Draisaitl, a top 10 pick. Jesse Puljujärvi, who, by the way, is playing with the Charlotte Checkers against the Abbotsford Canucks in the Calder Cup final, picked ahead of Matthew Tkachuk.
Became a champion either way, or at least went to the finals.
Yes. Magnus Puljujärvi, Philip Broberg, Evan Bouchard, and I think there's one other. So you can count 4 number 1 picks, 7 top 10 picks. Other than that, from now until 2018, and we can regress the entire mismanagement of that organization has been through, including really last season when they let 2 young players in Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg essentially be offer sheeted for nothing, and decided that Jeff Skinner was a better and Victor Arvidsson were better options for them. I think that there's a legitimate. I'm long story short, I respect McDavid's stance on this, and I don't think that the Oilers. You can tweet all you want about the last couple of years. There's a legitimate argument that Connor McDavid should have a Stanley Cup now, and maybe more than one.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, he's the best. He was the best player in the game. He's 28. He's going to be outside of his window. I mean, let's be honest, 28, 29 is when you start to regress for most players, even just a little bit. This is probably a guy who's going to sign a 7-year deal somewhere. That will very likely be his last NHL deal. I don't know why you wouldn't want to go somewhere where you can chase the cup. Show me the last guy before him who we looked at as the next big thing that didn't get a cup.
Did Eric Lindros get a cup?
I don't think so. That's probably the one.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody else, I mean, Crosby, the guys that we consider, I don't think we consider Eric Lindros the best to ever play the game.
Lindros made it to the finals twice. Made it to the finals once, 97, but never won.
I think that there's been a lot of.
I mean, my question, Kevin, would be, why would you go back to, Edmonton's had 2 cracks at this. Let's say he gives them another crack by going back this year. Why would he go back to Edmonton? This is a team that I think for most of his time there has been poorly managed. I think that roster, I still think Edmonton wasn't the best team in the playoffs. They outscored their mistakes. They've got questionable goaltending. Why would he want to re-sign there at this point? I can't give you a lot of answers.
It almost feels like this organization, and congratulations for getting to the final, but it's almost like this organization has said, yeah, we've got bad goaltending, but you know what? We also got McDavid and Draisaitl. Yeah, we don't have a blue line, but yeah, we got McDavid and Draisaitl. And I'm just wondering if at some point here, this is starting to wear on McDavid a little bit. Like you're putting so much, and from the very beginning with McDavid, they threw so much at this guy. They threw the captaincy at him when he was 19, 20 years old. They had all of these expectations put around him, and they've never really developed a complete team around them. And I know that there's a lot of people, Oiler fans, are going to respond, well, you look at the depth and what they did against Dallas and Vegas, and sure, yes, okay. Their depth played very well against Dallas and Vegas, but their depth did not show up against Florida. The Florida Panthers.
I mean, when I look at this roster, I mean, Nugent Hopkins, sure, he's good. Draisaitl, McDavid. Is Zach Hyman a first-line winger on a Stanley Cup team? Is Matthew Savoy a second-line winger?
They have high expectations of Savoy.
What about Podkolzin? I think these are good players. Look on the back end. Ekholm, Bouchard, Kulak, I don't think is a top 4. Nurse, I think, has seen his best days. This is a team that feels to me like a collection of pieces that you could afford.
Yeah, and I keep hearing Oiler fans or Oiler experts say we don't need excellent goaltending. We just need average goaltending. And I just don't
But Skinner's proven for more than one season he's not that, and neither's Picard.
No. And you're going to pay Evan Bouchard $10 million, which I think is an error, by the way, but let them make that decision. I don't think if you were going to have a solid, as good enough blue line as Florida did, that you're going to be paying Evan Bouchard $10 million. And you've got decisions to make on not only on a 34-year-old Matthias Ekholm and a Jake Wallman that you just acquired, you're going to have to sign next year too. And then you've got decisions to make on Corey Perry, who was your best winger in the final. And I'll grant you that, Ryan, I guess here would be my question for the Western Conference. If you're Dallas, you already fired your coach. If you're the Kings, you fired your GM. If you're any of those Western Conference opponents, are you feeling a little bit like you let something slip away here?
How so?
Well, when you look back at the Kings series, they had that odd challenge in Game 3 and then lost the game. And then Quentin Byfield in Game 4 couldn't quite get the puck out. He just should have flipped it and didn't. And Vegas fell asleep at the wheel and Dallas collapsed. And I feel like you could have an argument that they feel like they let something slip away than the Oilers. I mean, I'm not saying that the Oilers didn't deserve to win because they played well enough to win to get to the final. But I also wonder if Dallas and Vegas are kicking themselves a little bit in a missed opportunity.
Sure. I think for sure. I mean, Vegas has been a successful team since they entered the league. And they're probably kicking themselves, but I think probably in that room, in that office, they're saying, let's do it again next year. I think Dallas probably feels the same. We tried it. We fired the coach. They've still got the horses to do it again, I think. I think Edmonton's got the horses to potentially get into the playoffs once more with this roster. But after that, I mean, let's be honest, Kevin, if McDavid leaves, it's instant rebuild in Edmonton.
It kind of has to be. I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to sign. That's my prediction. But I think it's also. I think he did put the. Well, I think he put the organization on notice that you need to figure a lot more out.
Do you think he signs long term, or do you think he does a year and sees if they can figure it out?
I think he's going to go. I think he's going to go short term. I think it's going to be a 4-year deal. I think it's the same agency now that it's the same agent that Austin Matthews has. So I think he's going to try to capitalize and get 2 contracts out of this.
If he leaves Edmonton as a free agent, I think if Calgary still has as much cap room as they do, I think they could be winners of that by default because somebody's going to have to move money to take on that kind of deal.
Oh, could you imagine McDavid in Calgary?
I don't think McDavid's coming to Calgary. I don't think that would ever happen. Why would he come here? But let's say he goes to Dallas. I mean, they're going to need to move cap room, right? So I think that Calgary, we're already starting to see Anaheim adding cap room. Like I think, and they had a ton as well, or removing from their cap room, adding salary. But I think that, if Calgary still has as much room as they do, they could indirectly, same thing with Austin Matthews. I think whoever gets him is going to need to shed some cash.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, ultimately, I think the big news out of that is I'm not necessarily believing that Connor McDavid is leaving, but I think that Connor McDavid just put this organization on notice that they need to be better overall. Like I
don't know that they have the cap flexibility to do what Connor wants.
No, I don't know.
I mean, let me ask you this. If they run back the same team next year, do you think that Connor's happy? If this roster just plays better, is that what he's looking for?
No.
Right now, Edmonton has 11.9 million in cap space, which I believe includes the bump in the cap. If you guys sign Bouchard for 10, that gives you 1.9 million to play with.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how you would improve this roster the way that McDavid wants them to.
That's the question that's the big dilemma that you're going to run into. I mean, I'm assuming they're going to buy out Kane. I'm assuming they're not bringing back the Arvidssons and the Skinners of the world.
I don't know if they buy out Kane. I mean, if you're trying to save money, remember you're going to take that money against your cap for a while. I think you'd find a place to dump Kane's salary.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, we're here to break down the Flames, ultimately not the Oilers, but I do think that, like, in terms of where the Flames are at, I think that this is a really interesting conversation from the Flames' perspective, because I think this this is, I guess, for me, in a simple way, I think the Flames don't need to do much I think the Flames just need to stay patient in terms of what they are doing. And they will get.
I think we're
incrementally. Like I'll say this may be a hot take. I'll take the Flames blue line over the Oilers blue line right now,
for sure. And I think that based on
situation over the Oilers blue goaltending situation.
I agree. I think based on what we're seeing, we could see a very different balance of power in the Pacific Division next year.
It's quite.
Like if Edmonton takes a step back, Calgary was pretty close. I think Anaheim's going to take a step forward. I think LA might take a step back. I think Vancouver's going to stay about where they were. I think Vegas will probably stay about where they are. Seattle's a wild card to me.
Yeah, Seattle has to figure out their goaltending. That's the big question there, right?
Yep. We can talk about. I mean, there's one goalie on the market that I'm sure we'll talk about later, but I think that Dan Vladar could be the option for the Oilers.
I have another team in mind for Vladar too, but we'll get that there. But let's start with the Flames. Let's start with the news that happened within this week. And actually today, but I wanted to get back to start kind of back earlier this week. Even earlier, since we haven't had a chance, we did do I believe we discussed the Coronado signing.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I know we did on Fireside Chat.
Well, let's recap that. I think I really did like this signing for the Flames. I thought that this was a big step for the organization going 8 years. I think that from people outside of the organization, and I think even the first couple of years, I can see why people see it as an overpay. But I think as this contract goes, this is going to be a good value contract for the Flames going forward.
Anytime you're signing a long-term deal, you're generally going to overpay for part of it and underpay for part of it. That's that, it's averaging out, right? It's like when you book a hotel, you often pay more on the weekend, less on the weekday, but they show you average price for your stay. Like, I think, do I think he's worth 6.5 million next year? Maybe not. But I think when we look back at this, it'll be a good value overall.
Yep.
And at the same time, even if they overpay next year, I mean, isn't overpay, I think, in some ways, is them looking at, hey, it's going to get us the floor.
Yeah. And you're locking up, like, you weren't you're locking up a guy that, although he wouldn't be offer sheeted now, if you short term him, you are risking losing him either A, to free agency, a la Matthew Tkachuk, or B, an offer sheet. So you have kept him long enough that you've walked him to UFA and you're completely fine, and you don't have anything to worry about Matt Coronado going forward. That is
I think this is also important for the Flames too, because there's been this narrative over the past couple of years that U.S. players don't want to be here. Here's a U.S.-born player who just committed his good years to Calgary.
Yeah. And that also will when and they sign Dustin Wolf, that will be another step in that as well. When and
for
if.
Sure.
Well, yeah. The other signing,
I have no doubt the Wolf deal gets done.
Yeah, I don't think it gets done this year. I don't think it gets done this offseason, but I do think it gets done.
Yeah, I see no reason they have to have it done this offseason.
No. Adam Klapka was also signed a 2-year, $1.25 AAV. You kind of have to be proud of Adam Klapka. I mean, he worked his way into the lineup, after being up and down. He found a spot on this roster on the fourth line, which is,
I think don't forget, not drafted by the Flames, as a European free agent who also had to figure out the North American game.
Yeah. Like, he started off and he's still a little clunky with he's like this tall, he's this giant human being that he's got some natural talent that needs to have some refining. But in a lot of ways, the more I think about this was what we were expecting Walker Duehr to be. And Adam Klapka's being what Walker Duehr isn't.
Yep. And I think Adam Klapka and Ryan Lomberg, I really like that pair. I mean, Walker Duehr wasn't as big a man as Klapka, and I think, just Klapka's intimidating size is going to keep him in the lineup. I like this. He's a guy who's worked hard. He works hard every day to earn that. We got to give credit to the pro scouts for the Flames. It's another free agent that they've found that can jump into the NHL, and for all the free agents they've found over the years. I mean, maybe Mark Giordano being one of the most notable there who wasn't signed. I think good on you guys for finding this guy who was able to jump in and essentially get him for free.
Yep.
Let me ask you what I asked Matt. Does Adam Klapka turning pro, does that change how secure Marty Postel's place on this team is?
I think that the Flames can get, if the Flames were to put Marty Pospisil out there, I do think that there would be some teams interested in him. I think, the fact that I think a lot more teams are going to want the bite that Pospisil brings to the game, although at times it's been a bit undisciplined. I think some team will think that they can revive that in some ways.
When I look at it, looking at who's on the roster right now, and I think, remember last season the Flames moved Mangiapane just for the draft to sort of free up a roster spot. I think looking at who's on the forward roster right now, if you want to open a spot for someone like Honzig or Cairns, right now you've got, to me, one spot you could move, and that's 4C. And we saw Pospisil at center last year didn't look good. I'm more comfortable with Lomberg, Klapka as my wingers on the fourth. I think if you keep Pospisil, he becomes your 13th forward, and that's fine. But I think that if there is value to be had, now might be the time to explore that.
Yeah, I think it is I do think they will explore the possibles. I think they'll explore that option.
Let's just say I would not be surprised if after draft weekend, Marty Pospisil's not a Flame and they get a third or fourth for him.
Wouldn't be either. I wouldn't be either.
I wouldn't be surprised if he is a Flame, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not a Flame.
There's sort of this log jam of middle six forwards on this roster right now. I mean, like, the number one line is Kadri, Huberdeau, or the top three are Kadri, Huberdeau, or Coronado. I think that is there an argument? Is Kadri a number one center in this league? No, but he's the Flames' number one center. We'll get to that in a moment. Should Huberdeau be the number one winger? No, but he is. And then you've got this glut of Frost and Zary and Backlund and Colbin and Farabee and Sharon Govich. And there's just this glut of middle six forwards that I also think that Pospisil is kind of an odd person out in this situation.
And I think Pospisil is very different than those guys. I mean, let's be honest. Pospisil is your energy guy. You're not putting Pospisil on the third or second line looking for offensive production.
Right, but there were times that he played with Kadri and Huberdeau to give.
He did, and I think part of that was just looking for some. I think part of it was you're out of bodies, and part of it was, you know what, why not try it? But I think now with Frost and Farabee, I think both those guys would rank for me above him if you're trying to put together a line for production.
Oh yeah, totally. I agree. You got your, as of now, if the Flames had to put on an exhibition lineup now, it's probably your Backlund, Coleman, Zary, Frost, Farabee, Sharon Govich. And then,
I mean, if I'm looking at the lineup right now, Kevin, I'd say your line one is probably Huberdeau, Kadri, Coronado. Line two, based on what we saw, if he's healthy, is Zary, Backlund, Coleman. Three is probably Farabee, Frost, Sharon Govich, which leaves Klapka, Lomberg, and I mean, that seems like a great place to let a Kieran's try this, or Kirkland or somebody like that. I don't know where you can always use another guy like Pospisil. I mean, I wouldn't be sad if he's here; he's cheap, but I don't know. I think Pospisil, if Klapka stays playing as well as he did, I think Marty Pospisil's the odd man out.
Yeah, I'm gonna just toss this in here, Nan. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with this, but I did post this on Twitter. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Rooney's back.
Really? Why is that?
Well, he's going to be cheap, for one thing. They tried Rory Cairns as a fourth liner. It didn't work. I mean, the only other option that they would probably have is Samuel Morton. Justin Kirkland is, I guess, the other option, but he's a UFA, and I guess we'll wait and see if based on the Oliver Shillington experience, I'm not assuming that Justin Kirkland is just going to automatically walk back into that dressing room and live happily ever after. I think there is a world that Kevin Rooney is back.
I think that if you're looking for a 4 veteran C, I don't know if I'd go with the devil I know. I think it might be time to dance with a new devil and just bring in somebody different there. I mean, when I look at centermen that are available as UFAs, and there's a lot of more interesting choices for that.
It's not going to be their priority when they hit July 1st. I think that will be much later. But the other thing, just if I can defend Rooney just a touch, when Trent Call came in, his game did change. The penalty kill improved. And when Adam Klapka was on that line, we didn't hear as much complaints about the play of Kevin Rooney. I'm not saying that Kevin Rooney was spectacular. I'm not.
I just think if this team is rebuilding, they need to be making spots for young guys. And if those young guys don't do great there, I think that also has to be okay in some respects. Like, you've got to be willing to say, you know what? It's okay that maybe we're not getting what we want out of some of these guys, but we're trying them there. And I think the Kieran's experiment would be worth doing again. I think, if we look at some young players there, I mean, Graden's not ready. Honzig's probably your next guy up. Even if they want to stay within the organization, I wonder if a Martin Ferk or a Clark Bishop you put in there instead of Kieran's, instead of Rooney. Or even if you want a veteran guy, I wonder if you go younger. Do you bring in a Pius Sutter? Do you bring in a Michael Carson? Do you bring in a, Luke Kunin, a guy like that?
I guess it would. To me, that what you're telling me is they have a battle. They forsake Rooney and battle that out for training camp, and if none of them work out, they'll bring in a vet. I'm not saying they're going to sign Kevin Rooney on July 1st. I think that they'll wait, but all I'm saying is there is a path for Kevin Rooney to be back.
I think if Kevin Rooney comes back, he's a free agent, or he's I guess a training camp walk-on that is there because nobody else took the spot.
Well, look, the one thing that Kevin Rooney could be too is a guy that you move from the Saddle Dome, can move across Saddle Dome dressing rooms from the Flames dressing room to the Wrangler dressing room. There's probably might be some value with him on the AHL team too. So,
and I think if that's what you want from him, you need to let him shop around and see if he can get an NHL deal first.
Yep, for sure. I don't think the one thing, I mean, I think the betting favorite going into this would be Justin Kirkland, but I don't think that we can guarantee that.
No, I mean, I didn't mind Clark Bishop for what he was as a 29-year-old when he got his chance last year, and maybe that's the way to go too.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think Morton's ready.
No, I don't think he is either. But I do think that they want to give him I wouldn't mind him getting a look at the number 4 center. I mean,
I think internally they want that to be Honzig.
Yeah. And the other 3 pieces of news this week is Peter Hanlon, the former 30 years in the community PR side, which included, of course, COVID, the Bill Peters mess, the new arena disaster, communication.
Well, I would say the many new arenas. I mean, he was around during the Calgary Next days. Like, he's seen a lot of various iterations of this.
Yes. But he's been moved from PR to he's been moved to an assistant GM role, basically kind of doing what everybody else's role is now. Did they replace Chris? What did they do with Chris Snow's role?
Well, I guess depends which part of it. So Chris Snow was a assistant GM officially, and now we've got Nonis and we've got Hanlon there. Like we've got those guys in place, but Chris Snow was also kind of the Flames analytics guy, and they built out a whole analytics department since then.
And who's running that?
Let me take a look. I know a few of the people that are in it. It is, I think they call it part of their player dev. I know for a while, I think it was, let's see if it's on the website still. I mean, so it's Hendrix Hayes is director of analytics and data. Connor Rankins, who I was thinking about, senior video analyst and reserve list scout. Alex Robson's their data engineer, and Attain Rollo is their data analyst. So they've got 4 guys now in that spot.
Okay. But it's not, none of them are officially an assistant GM. So
no, they're not. But I mean, yes, they're not an unofficial assistant GM, but I think the fact that they have 4 guys there shows that's still a bigger part of what they do.
Yeah. No,
right? We still have 3 assistant GMs. We have Nonis, Pascal, and Hanlon.
And Pascal mostly looks after the Wranglers.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, part of Hanlon coming is now he's going to be that analytics guy. But I also don't know that we need a VP analytics. Like, when you listen to Conroy talk, analytics and that kind of thing is built into his thinking. So I think sometimes you needed that VP of analytics because we had GMs who maybe needed to be reminded that's a thing now.
Yeah. I wonder if Hanlon will come in and look after some cap, be a bit more capologist, because I don't know who does that in this team.
I think they have somebody who does. I think Mike Burke and the hockey administration team does that. Remember, we also have a president of hockey ops and Don Maloney.
Yes.
So, I mean, and again, I don't think you necessarily need to be I don't think you need to be an assistant GM to be the cap guy, but a lot of that is done with computers and spreadsheets.
That's true. Yep. But good for Peter to get the job, right? And good for the organization to recognize that what Hanlon has done for 30 years and, and bring that into the organization and bring that in, right? Like,
yeah. I just checked. Chris Snow's official title was Vice President of Data / Analytics and Assistant GM.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, good, like you said, good for Hanlon. I think he'll bring something different to the team. And I think, I think there's been a lot of times, especially in a hockey market like this, where the front office has needed a little bit more of a media touch to it. And I think he can bring some of that there. And how do we communicate what we're wanting to do? And I mean, for those that know Peter, he's been in hockey most of his life. Like, he's a good hockey guy. And I think another good voice of maybe that outsider, that guy who hasn't been a GM.
When we talk about when we do the Canucks part of our podcast, one of the words that we have talked a lot about in Canucks land is managing up. And that meaning, like, how do you communicate to the owner what you want to do? And that's been a huge problem in Vancouver for years. And I think you bring in a guy like Peter Hanlon, that helps you manage up to a Murray Edwards, and who will never speak to the media. Whether you like that or not is a whole entire different subject. I think Murray Edwards just wants to stay out of the way for the most part and let the team run itself. I think there's some people that don't like that. There's some people that don't. But what Peter Hanlon is doing, and what I think Craig Conroy has done better than Tree Living, Dan, is kind of manage up in terms of what the plan should be. Where I think Tree Living,
I think he has a plan. I mean, I think Tree's plan every year was get us to the cup. Oh crap, we didn't. All right, let's make a bunch of moves, try it again. Like, I don't think there was a long-term plan there.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the role that Peter Hanlon's been in, for as long as he's been in it here in Calgary, I really would not be surprised if that was part of why they're bringing him in, because I bet he has a relationship with Murray. He's lasted through many GMs. He's lasted through many hockey ops, admins here. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes almost the Murray whisperer.
Yep. It's an interesting thought. I do think that this is a smarter move than a lot of people gave credit for the Flames for. And you still have Jerome Iginla around. I don't know if he has an office, and I don't think he needs an office, but he's around as well. So there's a lot of people around there, around Conroy, helping making those decisions. And I think there's a lot of things that Conroy has kind of decided this is what he prefers to do and not really do. I think he's more in a scout draft guy than he is. And I think he's handling the trade situation, which we'll talk about here in a moment, a lot. I think he's getting a lot of that help from Anonis. I think, in terms of identity, I think Jerome is obviously helping with that, and skill he'll help. But I think I think Tree Living, one difference is Tree Living wanted to do everything. Conroy he knows what he likes to do. He knows what he would prefer someone else
and what he's good at. Yeah, and I think he's given everybody a job.
Yeah, it's a team, and I think that you have to be more of a team in terms of coaching and management and all of that than I think that people realize, right? Like, I know it's easy to figure at Ryan Huska and give him either A credit or B blame, but he gets all of that. The finger does get pointed at him, but it is a staff.
And I know we kind of glossed over it, but it's one of the reasons I like the Trent Cull becoming an assistant coach for the Flames, because again, like Huska, he's a development coach. He's worked with a lot of these guys. Like, I think him knowing some of these young guys and showing, hey, I can do that development is important for where the Flames are right now in their rebuild. Yeah.
Let's get to the coaching part, because that's some interesting news happened today around that as well. And then one more signing. So Dan Lambert has left the organization. A lot of people assumed he would join his brother Lane in Seattle, but that didn't happen. But Brad Larson is back with the organization after taking a leave of absence for the year. Trent Cull is now, after being called up from the Wranglers, as an official assistant coach with the Flames. And so they got Cale McLean, Brad Larson, and Trent Cull. And Dan, another Sutter, is a coach with the Calgary organization. As Darryl,
not that they're reusing the Sutter brothers. This is the second generation of Sutter coaches.
The second generation. Didn't Chris have a job with the organization too at one point?
He's always done the hype up stuff during the game. They'd have the Chris Cam and he'd dance and that sort of thing. I don't know if he had like an official hockey ops position.
Okay. But Brett went from captain to permanent head coach. Well, not permanent, but not interim head coach of the Calgary Wranglers.
You're missing a step. He went from being Calgary Flames draft pick to coming back in the AHL.
It's quite something.
Drafted in the 6th round, number 179 overall in 2005. Played for Quad Cities, played for Calgary, played for Abbotsford, and then really became a career AHLer. And last year, he joined the coaching staff, became the head coach for a couple games because, they went through 3 head coaches down there, but I'm surprised this is the pick.
I am too. But let's look at the pro of this. He's just out of retirement. And he kind of knows, he knows the AHL game. So I think that he's kind of fresh out of the player perspective. But the con of this is he doesn't have any experience. It feels like a very weird hire, ultimately.
You were talking earlier about coaching staff. All the pros you said, I think are great and why I would want him on my staff. I'm not sure he's the head coach, and I wonder if he's getting this just because, his dad's Daryl. He must be good at this thing too.
Well, I guess we need to wait to see how they fill out that staff, though, too. And they might be bringing in a veteran ECHL coach to kind of help them along the way, or a veteran WHL coach to help them along the way.
Or even an NHL guy who's getting the NHL guy would probably only come down if he got the head, like a assistant. But yeah, could be. I kind of thought, honestly, that if they were going to bring somebody up, they would look to promote from maybe the dub or something like that. But yeah, this came out of left field for me.
Yeah, this was a bit of a surprise to me, too. I wonder if Matt Stajan gets on the staff.
Joe Cirella, who's the head coach there, was also one of the head coaches last year after Cole left. He left, I think he had some sort of surgery, which is why Brett stepped in. But, Joe Cirella's been around forever. He could definitely potentially be one of those assistants. But, yeah, it feels like – remember, they have smaller coaching staffs in the AHL as well. But, yeah, it kind of feels like you need – if Cirella's not the head coach, I also wonder – what does that say to him? That, hey, Joe, you're our veteran guy. We don't want you. I wonder if he'd be looking for greener pastures at that point.
Yeah, maybe.
But it does, I don't know. It seems like an odd choice. It makes me wonder. Maybe the Flames know something we don't about him. Maybe they just like him as a guy. But it also makes me wonder if they might be wanting to go in a slightly different direction with the Wranglers and be more developmental than competitive.
Yeah, that could be too. I still think our championship run would do wonders for that city, but
I think it would be so cool if Brett was the AHL coach and Daryl was the head coach. I just think that'd be a neat story.
It would be. Too bad
both teams get in trouble and you can them both on the same day.
Yeah. Well, remember the days of Daryl and Brent were the GM and head coach there.
Yeah, and hey, there is another second generation. Brody is another second generation Sutter. So he played till 2022. So maybe they bring him in. But yeah, I think this will be interesting to see. And I wonder how long the Flames have not had AHL coach very long. Either they get brought up to the NHL or like Mitch Love go to another organization. So I guess is a position where you go, yeah, this is a good position for all my predecessors, but it makes you wonder how long till Brett is in the NHL.
Yeah, maybe.
Mitch Love before him, Huska was there, Cale McLean was there. The Flames have a good track record. Yeah, the Flames have a good track record of having AHL coaches go on to the NHL. So maybe this is their chance to, let's give him a try and see what he does. We don't know how long the contract's for. Generally, the AHL, they're not very long. But, it surprises me. But at the same time, I trust the management staff here. And if they think he's the right guy, let's give him a shot for a year.
Yep. It doesn't hurt.
No.
One other thing happened, and it was the signing of Dryden Hunt to a 2-year, two-way deal, which I would imagine will be more Wrangler than Flame. But I think he's going to be a good veteran guy to have down in, and already proven to be a good veteran guy to have with the Wranglers. But
I think Dryden Hunt is your new Brett Sutter as a player. Like Brett came back here to be a Wrangler because he was the Calgary boy. He was playing for his hometown team. He played here till he retired. Dryden Hunt's 29. He's from Airdrie, I believe. I think he'll play here until they won't sign him anymore. I think we all know right now what he is as a player. And if he thought he could get an NHL deal, he probably wouldn't have signed that. So I think Dryden Hunt becomes your, maybe even stick the C on him this year, but I think he becomes your hometown veteran boy as long as he wants to be here.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I'm at with him too. All right. So that's what's happened now. Now we look ahead. And I think the big question that we have to start with, Dan, is, and 45 minutes in, there was some news today around the Rasmus Andersson negotiations. According to Frank Saravalli, there have been conversations between the Flames camp and Rasmus Andersson's camp in terms of a contract extension, what it would look like. And according to Saravalli, they're not on the same page. I don't think that this is a surprise to me in terms of that wording, because usually when you start in a contract negotiation, you're pretty far apart anyway. So
the fact that they're just exchanging numbers now, I kind of figured that. I mean, if they were in the same ballpark, I think this would have been done a lot quicker.
Yeah, they would have.
If at the end of the year, the Flames said 6 for 6, it's not close enough. Let's do it. Right. Like the fact that they are just exchanging numbers now, I kind of assumed. And again, I mean, Ras is arguably the best Flame right now. You have to assume they're on different wavelengths. I'm not surprised by what Saravalli said, and that whole tweet feels like somebody leaked it as a process of negotiation.
Yeah, that's I think you're right there. I think
because the tweet even said the Flames are willing to go to an auction or something like that. Well, yeah, that's what you tell the guy. Hey, if you don't take this, we'll auction you the highest bidder, right? I mean, I'd be shocked if that's not what's being said in the negotiations.
Yep. Now, I guess the question is what you end up doing with Rasmus Andersson. And there's a lot of Flames Twitter who is suggesting that now is the time to trade Rasmus Andersson. Some would say not even negotiate, just go and trade him. I foundationally have to disagree with this, even from Rasmus's perspective on this. Why do you need to be traded now? You are coming off one of your worst years of your career. You want to come back and prove that you could. I'll throw a scenario out to you, Dan, that if I'm Rasmus, it makes some sense. Hear me out here. Let's picture that you're Seth Jones and you're on a tough team in Chicago and you're going nowhere, and you get traded to Florida for a couple of picks and you're out there raising the Stanley Cup. That's not inconceivably out of the possibility for Rasmus Andersson coming up next when we look at June 2026, that he's on a team that is raising a Stanley Cup. And when you're doing that, if you're Rasmus Andersson, you're in a situation that you are on a international stage, not only a national stage, and you probably are going to hit your big payday if you are ending up on a cup contender. For me, if I'm Rasmus Andersson, I don't even think that I signed with the Flames now. I wait as long as I possibly can to wait until free agency to see what I can get and prove that I can have a better year than I had last year, when he admittedly did not have a good year. If I'm Rasmus, I'm not signing anything now. I'm not signing anything on July 1st. Am I seeing this differently than anyone else?
I don't think there's any reason that he needs to sign now. I don't think it's a bad idea to open the conversation to see if you can make sure you're in the same ballpark. If you want to do 1 or 2 years, sure. But if I'm Raz, I probably do not, and this is where the Flames probably want to, I probably don't want to commit 4, 5, 6, 7 years to this team right now.
And I don't know if the Flames really want to commit 4, 5, 6, or 7 years to him. He's 29.
If I were the GM, I'd probably be looking at, I don't think we need to be our number one, but I'd probably do 4 or 5 years just to have that solid veteran on the blue line.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would be thinking as well. But I think Rasmus has every right to want to cash in on a 7-8 year deal.
The Raz thing reminds me a lot of Jerome, where, you know what, we all at the end were sad to see him go, but want him to chase the cup. I think we're going to feel the same way about Backlund here next year or the year after. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Raz stayed for a couple of years and then we say, go get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't see any reason now that you do that deal. And like you said, Raz is coming off a bad year. If he wants to maximize his value, he wouldn't want to sign a deal now. You maximize your value by having a great year or the best year you can in, the Flames roster and, talking again around the deadline.
Yeah. And I would imagine, I think there's going to end up being more teams that will be able to be in this conversation for Raz at the deadline. Like right now, for me, the teams that I think are sniffing around Rasmus would probably be Colorado, Winnipeg. I think New Jersey's going to be in on there. Someone has suggested Columbus.
I think there might be a lot more teams right now than you think because of Raz's cheap price tag. I think there's a lot of teams that might be willing to bring him in, even if for a year, to get a top 4 defense at less than $5 million.
Yeah, but I'm not retaining salary for him. If I'm the Flames, there's no way.
I'm not either.
No
but if I'm a team, let's go back to Edmonton. I'm not saying Edmonton can afford him, but if you're that team that thinks, crap, our defense is the reason we lost, I want to get a rental, I'd be willing to rent for less than $5 million.
Yeah.
And I might pay a premium to get that done now.
Yeah.
If I look at the options available in free agency, there I can see a team, maybe even a team like Dallas, who say we need to go out and find a guy quickly. Free agency is not going to get us where we need, or we're going to overpay. Let's bring Raz in for a year, and then from there, let's see if we want to bring him in after that or flip him at the deadline.
Man, after they missed on Chris Tanev, I think they're going to try to want to have an extension before they trade him. And they don't have any cap room.
They don't. But, but if you're Calgary, I think I would be more than happy to, for 1 year, I'd be more than happy to eat half that. It's going to cost you, but I'll eat it. He's $4.8 million. I'll eat 2.3 million.
Markstrom though, right?
Well, Markstrom comes off the end of this year.
Yeah, but then that's your 2 salary retention spots, right? Because you got Markstrom and Andersson.
No, the Flames, that's right. They retain Markstrom through 25-26, but at 1.8 million. I mean, again, yeah, you've got 2, but you can have up to 3. I'm not doing it for free. If you give me the right price, I got the cap room. I'll do it.
Okay.
It's going to cost you.
I'm not opposed to it.
Remember how much flack Conroy got at the deadline for not using all of his cap room? I think it's in some ways the same with your 3 retention spots. If you can use them, use them. You might want to keep 1, but if you just keep them there and don't use them, you might be losing out on value.
But I also don't think you need to rush this trade. I don't think you need to make this trade at the draft.
No, I don't either.
I think that you can wait on this, and I think there may be some, like, if you get,
and I also think that there's a lot of scenarios not a lot. There's a compelling scenario in my head where you don't even make the trade and you bring them back.
Well, let's look at the reason that I think everybody is saying that it's okay to trade Andersson. One of the things that Craig Conroy said about Zane Parekh in the Barn Burner interview that nobody is paying attention to. Yes, Zane Parekh had a great game 82 against the LA Kings, but Craig Conroy said he's not strong enough to play an 82-game season. Like, in terms of his physical strength, he's not strong enough yet. So you are going to have to bring in a veteran. If you're trading Rasmus, you're going to have to bring in a veteran defenseman that is not going to be as good as bad as Rasmus was last year. You're not going to find a defenseman better than Rasmus out there, which if you want the Flames to slide back, great. That's perfect. That's awesome. But I also think that you need to be very careful in how the Flames are not going to just throw Zane Parekh in for 82 games. They're not
and even if they do, I don't think they throw him in as a number 1-2. Like, I think Parekh will start on the third pair and work his way up.
Yeah. And then you've got Braden Bahal in your top 4 if you don't bring someone in.
I mean, if you get rid of Andersson, your top 4 is Ball, Weegar, Pahal, and then you've got Bean and
there's Joel
Hunter
Henry,
Brustevich.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think there's a scenario where that's okay if this team is rebuilding and you're okay with them taking a step back, and that might be what it quote unquote takes to take a step back. I'm not saying they should do it. I also think that if you want to go find a free agent defenseman, just a veteran body, there's lots of them available.
Yep. No.
I mean, just throwing some cheaper names out there if you wanted to. I mean, if you're just looking for a guy who could maybe be a top 4 on a rebuilding team, I think Tucker Poolman could step in there. Cody Ceci.
He's not even healthy, Dan.
Cody Ceci, Alec Martinez.
Sure.
Ryan Lindgren, potentially.
Those are left shots, but yeah.
But I don't think they need any more right shots. I think they've got enough right shots right now if they move on from him. And if they bring up Parekh and Brustevich.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you want a right shot, Dante Fabro could work. There's some options there if you just want a body.
Sure. There's Matt Dumba as an option.
Yep.
Like there are options out there. I just
I'm also curious to know, and this is one that I'm a little nervous about as a Flames fan. Ball's not signed yet. And to me, that also becomes and maybe one of the reasons they're far apart. I think we all know Ball's kind of the heir apparent. We know what Weegar's making. We don't know what Ball's making. If I was the negotiating team for Raz, I'd want to see what those two numbers are.
Yeah. Where are they at with Ball? There was a report that was close, or
could be. As of now, he's unsigned.
They'll get that done, though, I think.
Yeah, but I'm just curious what that number is.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they don't get it done, nobody's going to offer sheet him.
Are you sure
for the amount of money you would take to offer sheet him? Calgary would match.
Yeah, they should be able to match, but I would think they want to get that done as quickly as possible.
Oh, I bet they do too. I mean, if the Flames move Andersson, is there an urgency to do it at this draft? No. But if the deal is out there, I wouldn't be opposed to it. If it's the right deal, and again, a team wants that team control or wants Calgary to eat half, or the right deal comes along. I mean, if you could slide into the top 10 next year for it, I'd do it at the draft.
Yeah, I don't think it's there.
I don't either. And the other thing to remember is we often overvalue our own assets. I don't think Andersson right now is worth as much as we Calgary fans think he is.
No, he's not.
I think the best way to get the money for him or the value for him, I think Saravelli said it, wait till deadline day and auction him off.
Saravelli also
bidder wins.
Now, the other argument, and I think that Saravelli made, and I heard, and I think there's a validity to it now. If Dustin Wolf is, the Flames as constructed we're only a regulation win out of the playoffs, and you can view this for whatever way that you want, but the fact of the matter is goaltending was the strength of this team. And if you keep Andersson, you might be a playoff team this year. And
they would have a shot at it if Andersson's here. If he has a better season, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if Wolf takes a step back, then you're probably back and you have a chance at your top 10. If you trade Andersson now, you've given yourself that better chance to be in the top 10. I guess for me, I don't like this phrase that is going around here for the last couple of years is the Flames need to be bad.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's okay for them to not win and it's okay to be bad, but I don't want to construct the team to be bad.
Yeah, I
don't want to lose deliberately to be bad.
Yeah, I don't. That's tanking. And I don't think that you want to lose deliberately. I don't think that the organization, you still want to compete in hockey games. You still want a team to develop, like even. And look, the Oilers are a lesson from up north here, even north from Vancouver, is you can get all these top 10 picks. Mm-hmm. That's great, but you still have to develop a team and an identity to be successful. And it's not, nobody's saying you don't need elite talent. It's not a guarantee to win anything just because you have a number one pick.
The Flames are already going to have a pretty bad, like if they bring back a lot of these same guys, they're going to have a pretty bad blue line as it is. Yeah. Uyghur, Andersson, Bean, Mirmanov, Pakal, Hanley's probably gone, and Ball. Like Mirmanov had a terrible season. I don't know the Bean showed enough. Pakal looked good. Who knows if he will again? Like, this is really, if you want to have a fighting chance, you need a guy like Andersson.
I wouldn't be surprised if they bring Hanley back. If the Flames made the playoffs, I think Hanley would have been an overpaid defenseman that a lot of teams run.
I think you might bring him back. I think again he might be that guy that the Flames like to have a veteran. They slide down to the A. I just think again if they're rebuilding, you need to give that top 7 spot to a guy like Soloviev over Hanley.
I agree.
I mean, honestly, I think what's more likely is that Mirmanov gets waived and sent down, and Soloviev takes his spot.
Yeah, I don't expect Mirmanov will be back next year.
No, they're not going to buy him out at 1.2. I mean, if you get 1.1 if you send a guy down that doesn't count against the caps, you send him down for 100,000 against your cap. That's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Well, I guess we'll wait and see on Rasmus. Again, if there's a deal to be made, do it. If it's not there, don't. I mean, ultimately, we've seen, look, Conroy waited on the Markstrom deal and got Kevin Ball in a first. So there's value in waiting.
But a lot of people thought that he didn't get the better. A lot of people still, I think that the deal that he potentially had at the deadline was the better deal there.
It wasn't, though.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not be in a rush to move Andersson. I think Andersson can be a valuable Flame next year. But if the right deal comes along, I also wouldn't, if you're in the camp that you want to move him, I also wouldn't be opposed to moving him if the right deal's there.
Yeah.
You got to take the bird in hand. And maybe you don't get a better deal. Maybe he gets injured by the deadline. Like, there is risk to waiting to the deadline.
Sure. But he could get traded. He could get traded here in the offseason and still get injured during the season.
He sure could. I mean, he could, it could be Anthony Mantha, right? Where the Flames brought him in, I think, looking to just flip him. Guy got hurt. He was no value to them. So I think if the right deal comes, you take it. But I don't think you're actively trying to say this guy will not come to camp as a Flame.
Yeah. For me, though, I guess the one thing that I don't know if I want to go like the right deal. It has to be better than a first roster player prospect. The typical rental or sell. I think you have to do a little better than that for me. To me,
better than all 3 of those pieces. What would it look like for you then?
Either an extra pick or an extra prospect. And I don't think you're going to get it now.
What if they No, I think that if they're going to move Andersson, I think more than even looking at the pick and prospect, I think there's a viable. If you want to move him this offseason, it would be very viable to move him and get the center you need. And I could see a move where there isn't a lot of futures. It is Andersson for a roster center.
Well, that's the thing, and I guess that's the next area of question, right? We do know that there's a glut of middle six forwards on the Flames. They do need a number one type of forward. It doesn't feel like it's out there right now, but I also think listening to your podcast, I do agree that the Flames two priorities this year for me in terms of just finding players is, well, there's three. You got to find centers no matter what. There's not enough good centers in this organization. And even with Kadri and Backlund was not 100% last year. We know that. You have to find a replacement for him. Kadri is also in his mid 30s. You have to find a replacement for that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I would still say that doesn't happen more than it does, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that you're looking at a Kadri or a Coleman being traded at a deadline. I think it's more likely Coleman than Kadri, in my opinion, but maybe both. So you still are going to have to find your centers. There's not really a number one center out there that I think the Flames are pursuing. I think there's Marco Rossi is a good number two. I think the other guys,
but I don't think the Flames need an elite number one center right now either.
No, I don't either. I think they need centers. Eventually, they need to find an elite center, but they need centers.
I think right now you're looking for a stopgap center while the guys you're drafting have time to develop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll throw a name out there. You tell me what you think. I could see the Flames making a pitch for Andreas Athanasiou.
Yeah, he'd be a
30-year-old coming out of Chicago, left shot, but I think he could be your one of your stopgap centers while you're trying to let somebody else develop.
He's more of a winger though than a center.
Yeah, he can play all three positions, and I think because he's more of a winger, he might be a little bit cheaper too.
I have another name. I'll toss a name at you now. From Utah, Jack McBain. He's 6. Let me make sure I have the height of him here.
See, I was looking at free agents, guys they could get for free.
Yeah, McBain would be a trade.
Yeah.
But he is, looking at his size here. He's 2 years. He's 1.5. He is, I'm just pulling this up. This is good podcast. Good podcast. 6'4", 218, 25 years old. He plays with a bit of meanness. He would be a good fourth line guy with a Lomberg and a Klapka to do some crashing.
But I think if you want a fourth line center, I don't know. I spend an asset to get that.
Well, then again, it adds depth to the organization. That would be the only reason why I would consider it.
Sure, but I think you can find that fourth line depth for free. I mean, if I was the GM, and I'm not, and I'm looking for a fourth line younger center like that, I'd even go after a guy like Morgan Geekie, who's going to be a free agent, 26 years old, or or a Mason Appleton. Like, I think there's a lot of, you could find that fourth line center and not give up the asset. I also don't know what you're going to give Utah to get that guy out. Like, I don't know what Utah wants from the Flames.
Yeah, that would, well, that's, I guess, the question, but that's another name that I heard that name out there. I'm like, that's an interesting name.
I think if you're going to see a trade for a center, it would be, and I know he's not really a center, but I think if you're going to see a trade for a center, it would be, and I'll just throw out two names. I think there'd have to be more in the package, but I think it would be something big like Andersson for Robertson.
Yeah, again, he's a winger, but I mean, The pro for getting Jason Robertson is he would be your number one winger. You could move Huberdeau to your second line. I think it has to be more than Rasmus Andersson to get that done, though.
I agree, but I think those would be your two key pieces, right?
Yeah.
I know that last year there's talk of Zegras. Like, I think if you want if you're gonna move an asset for a center, I think it's got to be a top 2 center, and I think there's enough of them out there. I mean, I could even see, if you're looking to go young, I think that's the only asset the Flames have to give up is Andersson to get that done. But I think you're going to trade for somebody higher up the depth chart.
Yeah. I mean, the names that have been tossed out there, you got Marco Rossi is out there. Kirby Doc, I think, is out there. I think there's Trevor Zegras' name has been out there, which I do think even with Quenneville is an option. I think Josh Norris in Buffalo is an option. So there's a lot. There are options out there. I do think the Flames will come away with a center with an NHL type of center out of this offseason. I don't know if it's going to be a number one with a bullet center, but
I think you're looking if they're going to acquire a guy, and I know Robertson's not a center, but I like him because he's in that age range where you could let him develop into that. And I think the Flames need to find a guy in their mid-20s who they're willing to give some time to say, all right, we're going to give you this spot. We're going to give you that time. If you work out, great. If not, you'll be a good number 2.
Yeah.
Or 3. And, I think you've got to be open to that possibility. And they might need to bring in an older guy, a Mantha type, just to fill some roster spots. But I think that I think that they do need to find a center either through trade or free agency. And again, I think there's enough out there that if you're not planning to be a playoff team necessarily, I think there's enough plug-in centers you could go find.
Yeah. And they still have to sign Morgan Frost. They also have to sign Connor Zary, right? So those are 2 RFAs that they need to look at.
Yep. But I don't think either of those are really expensive deals.
No. I think both should be bridge deals, I would expect.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I still don't know what Zary is. Like, he's been hurt for so long. He's been hurt almost every season he's been a pro. I still don't know what you've got there.
I think he's a legitimate top 6 forward. Whether he's a center or not is a debate for me, but I do think he's a top 6 forward in the league if he's healthy.
But I just don't know if he can stay healthy enough.
That's totally fair.
Right? And I don't think you want to pin a top 6 spot on a guy who's only playing it for half the time.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, it's kind of just been so unfortunate with Zary and his injuries. I feel bad for him, but
another way that I think Calgary could end up getting an NHL center, maybe not your number 1, but whoever takes a swing at Mitch Marner or John Tavares or a big deal like that, I think might have to move some money. And I think Calgary could end up getting, a center for considering that person in the future.
Yeah, that's also an option. I mean,
you might be getting a decent, maybe probably older, 30 plus, but if you're just looking for an NHL body, I think that might be the way to get an NHL center. There's not a lot of teams that can take on either of those deals and not have to move something out.
The one thing that I will say, though, is I would hope that they don't bring in an older player to fill a top 6 role. If it's a bottom 6 role, a 4th line kind of center guy, like, I'll just toss a name as an example. I don't see it happen. It's not going to happen. But like, if they were to toss in 36-year-old Derek Ryan to play the top that 4th line role, that's understandable. But I don't think that you can bring in a guy in a 30-year-old or older to play a top 6 role. I think
you can on a year or two because you have no better options.
But if you're rebuilding, you want to develop that. You want the players that develop the younger players to take that spot.
Sure. So bring in a guy and say take a spot. Like, let's say the Flames were able to go out and get. I'll just pick a name here. I don't know. Let's say who's an old center. I don't know, Ryan O'Reilly, let's just say. I think if you bring him in for a year and you say, you know what, we're going to put him there, we're fine to play him on the fourth line if somebody takes his job. But he's there because none of you guys got this done. Go show us you're better than him.
So you're creating competition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what they did with Kadri, right? I mean, Kadri's old. He was number one center because there was no better option. If you bring in, again, let's use Ryan O'Reilly as an old center example, who maybe you wouldn't trade for him, but if you could get, or you wouldn't trade market value, but if you get him because somebody needs to move money or whatever, I wouldn't trade market value. But let's say they need to move him to free up some cash, bring him in on a year or two and say, you know what? We hope somebody takes his job. We want to play him on the fourth line, or we want to sit him in the press box.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Rory Kearns, be better than Ryan O'Reilly.
Okay. I kind of see your point.
Right? And it's not like the Flames are going to ride. It's not like Marchand's going to come in and we're going to ride him to the cup. Let's be honest. It's still a team that has a lot of warts to it. But I think there's also value, and we didn't talk about this with Andersson. I think there's value to having veterans play with the young guys. And I think bringing in a guy like, Ryan O'Reilly, just for example, could be great to help develop maybe Frost and Farabee on his wings. Like, I think there's more value to that than we often see. And it's one of the reasons I would be totally okay if the Flames keep Andersson, because I think there's value to having young or, semi-young, like less than 30, but even when he's over 30, I mean, I think once Backlund leaves, the heir apparent is Andersson, and I'd be okay to keep Andersson here and let him be that veteran. No, he's not always going to be our number two, but he's that guy that can play with Parekh. He's that guy that can play with Brstevich. He's the guy that can be the solid veteran on our blue line.
Yeah, and Rasmus Andersson has talked a lot about what Chris Tanev has helped do for his game when Tanev was with the Flames. Yeah. Right? So. And Matthew Tkachuk probably isn't the player he is without playing with Michael Backlund.
Nope. So, I think, and that's why I'd be okay keeping him here too. I mean, even a guy like Craig Conroy, he was here not in his best years, but we needed that veteran presence in our lineup.
Yeah. It is valuable. I know that people want all these young players. And
I mean, let's assume that the Flames draft whoever you think the right guy is. Let's assume that the Flames draft a hot center this year in the draft. Okay, they've got their guy they think they could ride for a while. He's not going to be NHL ready this year. So you need a stopgap. So again, I'd be okay to bring in a veteran center as that stopgap, knowing we're not signing this guy to 6, 7, 8, 9 years. We're signing him to 2 years, and we're saying somebody take the job or be ready by then.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think
even a guy like 37-year-old Claude Giroux for a year, or a Nicholas Backstrom type. I mean, you have to pay him less, but for 1 or 2 years could be viable, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just establishing a standard and an identity with this team, which I think, let's face it, one of the reasons that there's been 6 playoff wins in 35 years is this team hasn't really had it. They haven't had that identity. So I think it's establishing that. And I think Conroy and this organization is starting to see the value in that. So I see your point, but I hope that I do think that, hopefully Zary is healthy. Hopefully Frost and Farabee take big steps next year.
If the Flames were a competitive team, I'd feel differently. But if they go into the season with the centers of Kadri, Backlund, Frost, and I don't know, put in a free agent like Lars Eller or Luke Kunin or whoever, I think that's fine for where they are. If that veteran can help and I think honestly, part of the Coronado's development has been playing with veterans.
Yeah.
right? I think if we can get that out of a Farabee or a Frost or even a Sharon Govich who needs a back, a bounce back, I think if that veteran can help us further our young players, there's value to that.
Well, you've got, I mean, how many of these players, even when Jonathan Huberdeau was struggling, how often did they threw him with Backlund and Coleman to fix him?
Yeah.
They're
Look at the old Kadri and the kids line, right? Arguably, I think Zari and Postel came along in their development because of the veteran.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I think there's value to that. I wouldn't sign them for a long term, nor would I expect we bring in Ryan O'Reilly, whoever, and we're hoisting the cup next year. That's not the design of the team, but as a tool for development, Michael Granlund could work. Any of these kind of 30 plus centers could have a place.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand where you're coming from.
If there was an heir apparent, if Honzig was ready, I'd say give him the shot. But right now, I don't think they have. I mean, we talked about that earlier. I don't think they have that guy.
No. I guess the other big question, and it's not a major question, but it's a fascinating question. And it's the question of Dan Vladar, who, sounds like they're a little off, but not significantly off. It's a fascinating question because I think if Vladar goes to free agency, I do think that there are teams that would take a really good look at him. And one of the teams that I'll toss out there is Winnipeg, because I think one of the conversations they are going to have going forward is how many games does Connor Hellebuck play in the regular season?
Getting older.
Yeah, he's getting older. And one of the things that Sergei Bobrovsky had to be convinced of, and now has 2 cup rings because he was convinced of this, he's played less, and he's playing less in the regular season, and he's able to play the entire playoffs. And I think Winnipeg needs to have a really good look at Dan Vladar, because he's a guy that can play 30, 35 games for you.
And will be cost effective.
Exactly.
And there's 3 guys, and I think there's really 3 if you're willing to go older. I think Dan Vladar and Ilya Samsonov, who are both in that late 20s range, making about the same, are going to be, and there's going to be a lot of teams reaching out to those guys.
And Jake Allen.
Jake Allen's 34. Like, I think if you're looking for a younger guy, you're going to go for Vladar, Samsonov. I think there will be some suitors for Allen, sure.
I think there is a world, and I know there's some recency bias here, but there is a world where I could see Vladar being the most pursued goaltender in free agency.
I agree. I don't think you see Dan Vladar here signed before July 1st. I think we owe it to him to see if he can get a starter job. He was brought in to back up Markstrom. I think he was brought in to be the heir apparent to Markstrom. Markstrom got traded. Wolf became the starter. I think this guy, you owe it to him to see if he can go out and become a starter. And
Dan Vladar, pardon my French, Dan Vladar at times took a shit sandwich here. He played a lot of he played the second of back-to-backs most of the time. I think it was once that Dustin Wolf did. He played some of the tougher teams in those back-to-backs as well. Played a lot more road games than home games.
But to his credit, he also looked really good after his year-ending surgery the season before.
Yep. Yeah, he played really well. And I think I agree with you. He deserves a look. He deserves an opportunity to get that opportunity elsewhere. He's not.
And if I was his agent, I'd say I'm not against coming back. Let me just see what I can get.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes an interesting question of what do the Flames do? Because I think that their plan, which was Cooley, is not going to pan out.
No. Yeah, Cooley is a career minor leaguer.
I think the way he started last season, he was looking like he was NHL ready. I mean, he was the best goalie in the AHL by far. Got hurt, didn't look good. I think you got to see how he bounces back this year.
Yeah.
But I think you got to see how he bounces back by giving him starter time in the A.
Well, there are going to be there's some interesting names that are going to be out there too. I mean, I think that someone's going to have to be plucked out. I wouldn't be surprised if the Flames don't bring in their backup until closer to training camp, though.
I don't know. I think that there's slim pickings on goaltenders that if you're going to go get one, you need to do it quickly.
Yeah.
I can honestly see a scenario where the Flames wanting to spend some money potentially or being allowed to spend some money and a guy looking for maybe a last shot. I could see a scenario where Jake Allen ends up here. I think you need somebody veteran.
Yeah.
And I think it also depends how many games you plan for Wolf to play. If you're planning for Wolf to play, let's say 60 plus, you don't bring in Allen. I think at that point, I'd look at a guy like James Reimer, a 37-year-old who's going to be good enough to play 20 games. I think if you want to limit Wolf or have Wolf play more of a 1A, 1B, I can see a guy like Allen. I can see a guy like Anton Forsberg potentially.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting conversations that the Flames have to have on this part is, sorry, I was waiting for the plane to fly over. I think one of the interesting conversations that the Flames have to have here is, Wolf could be better next year, but Wolf could also take a step back. And I'm not saying that that makes Wolf a bad goalie. It's just part of the progression of any
development.
Player, right?
Yeah.
It's part of development. So you want to bring someone in that, I mean, teams are going to have a book on Dustin Wolf. You know that Dustin Wolf's going to have a book on them, but teams are going to have a book on Dustin Wolf next year. Then I think you want to bring someone in that I do think that you want to bring someone in that has played some number one in the league, right? So I could see.
And I think, knock on wood, Kevin, what if Wolf gets hurt?
Yeah, exactly. That's the other question, right?
Right.
That's
I mean, are you comfortable in my scenario? You're comfortable with James Reimer, playing and again, maybe there's a strategy to saying, you know what, if Wolf can't do it, we're okay having a lesser goaltender for reasons.
Air quote. Yeah. Yeah.
Like if that's what you want, if you just want a serviceable backup, Michael DiPietro, I think Alex Lyon, Capo Kakkonen, like there's enough.
Capo Kakko is not a goalie.
No, Capo Kakkonen is, I think there's enough serviceable backup types, even like a Spencer Martin, if you really want to go cheap. But I think, the Flames have to ask themselves, what do they want here? And is this 1 year? They don't have another goalie in the pipeline. So I could see them even trying to tie a guy up for 2-3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that too.
Do you see any way that David Riddick comes back?
No.
I don't either.
I'm just kind of scouring.
I think there's one unknown here that we have to, if we're talking about goalies on the market, the one unknown scenario could be if the current Canada 2018 trial, if the guys are found innocent, I think Carter Hart would be a compelling option for some teams.
Yeah, there's a lot of people connecting Carter. We are not getting into this trial, but there's a lot of people connecting Carter Hart to the Edmonton Oilers.
If he's able to walk away, I think that there's some compelling evidence that he could be the best young goaltender on the market, or one of them.
I got to be honest with you, like even before this, Dan, I wasn't a fan of Carter Hart before. You know who if I'm the Flames, I would take a shot at?
Who's that?
Connor Ingram.
Is he free agent?
I don't think he is. I'll just look this up, but I do
So what would you
think
give up?
if you could give up a lower pick, I would consider him for a backup. Now,
But to me, I don't know if I'm gonna move an asset. I'm not sure backups where I want to move the asset.
Let's see. Let's look here. He is.
I think one guy who made more last year and is going to need sort of a show me deal is Cal Peterson, who's a free agent out of Philly. I don't know that he's going to get that kind of deal again. I could see the Flames trying to bring him in as a number 2 for Wolf.
Just looking up Connor Ingram's numbers.
I'm also not convinced Robin Leonard is going to get another starting job.
I think he's close to retired.
And maybe that's why you bring him in for a year or two, sort of like Allen. Maybe you say, you know what, come sunset your career here. I mean, look at how well that worked with Flower last year, right? It's been done.
Connor Ingram has one more year at 1.9.
I think it's going to take more than a low round pick for that.
He's had some mental health struggles, which is sort of the question around him. That's why I thought about him.
But I think we're trying to, I mean, we had that with, Shillington. And I think if we're trying to bring a guy in who has mental health struggles, you're going to need a number 3 in case he can't do it. And I don't think they want to bring in 2 guys. I think then we're back to what we talked about. As Wolf gets hurt, Ingram is out with mental health struggles. Up comes what? Cooley?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating, it's an interesting situation. And
to me, and we talked about this with centers and bringing in old guys. I'm perfectly fine to bring in a plus 30-year-old goalie here. I think there's value to having a young goalie work with an old goalie.
Yeah. And there is value in bringing Vladar back.
For sure, if he wants to come back. But again, I think if somebody offers him a 1A or a starter job, which I think he will, I would take it if I was Vladar.
Yeah, even a solid 1B. There's a couple of places. I mean, even Florida, it wouldn't be a bad idea for him because he's going to get games in the regular season with Florida.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to get games in the playoffs.
Nope.
All
right. Here's a crazy idea. Edmonton wants to bring Vladar in. They want to move on from Skinner. If they came to Calgary and said, "We'll eat half," would you take Skinner?
You know what? As a human, I like him, and I don't think I.
Or even if they said, "Take the whole contract off our hands, and we'll give you something to do it." Let's say a third.
No, I think he's a bit. I think it's. There'd be less pressure on him in goaltending here in Calgary than it is in Edmonton, where I feel like, rightly or not, mostly rightly, the finger has been pointed at goaltending, but I wouldn't do it.
I think the value, I wouldn't want to do it mostly because of the Oilers, but I think the value there would be that he doesn't have to be your everyday guy. We've seen him work well generally after he's been yanked for a couple games and comes back in. And I think having him play 20, 25, 28 games might be the speed he needs to be at.
Right. Here's another name for you. I'll toss another name into this conversation. He's playing in the Calder Cup just for the hell of it. What about Arthur Silovs?
Again, what are you willing to give up to get him?
They may have to place him on way. Here's the thing: if they don't trade Demko, and I don't think they should, they're not trading Lankinen. They may have to place him on waivers.
If he's free on waivers, sure. But at that point, I think you need to find another guy. Let's just say the Flames go and get, say, Reimer. I don't think that waiver claim comes until training camp. I don't think you want to wait that long that maybe he's on waivers. So I think, you go and you get somebody like Reimer. And if you can get a great player like that on waivers, you send Reimer down. And if he gets claimed, he gets claimed.
Yeah. Here's the other question that has just popped in my head. But how many games is Dustin Wolf playing next year in your head?
I think that's where we have to be careful. And I think that this year, Dustin Wolf, he didn't become the quote unquote starter till near the end of the season, right? They were playing every other. Like they were playing a 1A, 1B system. And I don't know that you give Dustin Wolf 60 games next year. I think an ideal workload for him based on where the Flames are at with their rebuild is about 50 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think you're going to play him 60. I think you're going to play him 50.
And I think, like you said earlier, as teams start to get the book on him, I don't think at some point he's going to struggle. Like he's not going to go like last year every year. And I think next year we often see the sophomore slump. I think in the next couple of years, he's going to hit a hard spot. He's going to have to work his way out of.
He hit a hard spot in March this year.
He did. And even the season before, remember they brought him up at the end and he hit a bit of a hard spot.
Yeah, it's good. There's some growing pains for sure.
And that's where I think there's value to having a guy like a Leonard or, someone like that as the backup who can talk him out of it, but also can say, let me go in and do this. And I know how to do it.
He played 53 last year, by the way.
So I think that's about right. I was going to say 50 to 55.
Yeah, I think that's where you want your number one goalie now. I don't think you want your goalie playing 60 games, your number one goalie playing 60 games.
No, and you also don't want it to be the position we saw the Flames in for so many years, which is we're close to the playoffs. We just have to keep playing Markstrom because we won't get in without him. Like I think you at some point need to say he's got his 55. We're putting the other guy in and the chips will fall where they may, but you need a guy that you can trust to do that.
Some breaking news here, Dan. Elliot Friedman has in his latest blog, 32 Thoughts blog. I'm just going to quote this regarding Rasmus Andersson. The feeling across the league is the talented defenseman is ready for something new. I believe the Flames are willing, but only when they get what they want. There's significant interest, which helps.
That's kind of what we said, right? There's no rush to trade him.
Yeah.
But when you get the right deal, you move him.
Yeah. I agree. But it sounds... I kind of, as I've been listening through this entire process, have been more on the side, ultimately, that I don't think Rasmus is back for next year. I'm 55% for it, like, in terms of the prediction. But again, it just depends on the value of what you're getting with.
And I also think that it's very likely if Ras isn't here, that it's not July 1 or the draft. Like I can see other teams trying to do their free agent shopping, saying we didn't get the guy we want. Now we got to go pay for a guy. So what's it going to cost?
And Conroy's been, and I think that one of the other things, if you look back at I think one of the things that I think Craig Conroy will look back on with the Matthew Tkachuk situation is they got the best. Tree Living probably got the best deal he thought at the time, but you wonder if he would have waited a little longer with Tkachuk, if he would have got more. And I
don't know that he could have. I mean, it sounded like Tkachuk really that's where he wanted to go, and I think he had a no trade too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I just looked it up. Raz has a 6-team no trade list. So that still lets you trade him to a lot of places in the league. When you're handcuffed and the guy says, I want to go here, I don't think you've got much option.
Yeah.
And I mean, hindsight's 2020, but at the time we were excited by that deal. I mean, we just brought in 100+ point scorer.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if you waited, I don't know what else you would have got.
That's for that trade. I know Tree Living is the one that ultimately gets the criticism for it, but the real criticism on that trade should always be on Jonathan Huberdeau for not performing up to what he was expected of him. And I think that weighs on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this in your show before. I think we need to reframe this trade as the Huberdeau trade and start looking at it as the Weegar trade. I think Weegar, while we give Huberdeau a lot of flack, I don't think Weegar gets enough credit for really becoming the number one here that he's become.
Yeah, no, and I mean, he was on the cusp as Team Canada for the Four Nations. I think he's going to be on the cusp for Team Canada for the Olympics. I think that there's a conversation that he could play there too. Yep. So, like, the Flames lost the trade, obviously, but that's not Mackenzie Weegar's fault.
Nope. And again, I mean, we were talking about centers earlier, right? I mean, Weegar's 31 now. He came in as a late 20s defenseman. He's had a couple good years here. I think he'll have one or two more. Like, I can see value in the Flames bringing in a couple of guys who are in their mid-20s to get those last couple good years out of them and then keep them around.
Yep.
The other thing to remember about Dan Vladar, and we're talking about the starter, he's only played 105 NHL games. 95 of those are starts. Like, this is still, to me, a goaltender that has had some good streaks, but is still unproven as a starter.
Yeah. If you're Edmonton, I mean, I don't think you're looking at Vladar as a guy that, like, you got to look a lot higher than Vladar.
He's your number two. He's better than Picard. He's better than, what's his name, the AHL guy, Rodrigue or whatever.
Yeah.
He becomes your number two behind Skinner, and I think that's exactly where he should be. If he's a starter, I think it's in a place where they're not going to the playoffs and they just need a goalie.
Like a San Jose or a Chicago. Well, San Jose would be a backup, or,
I could see a scenario where he goes to Anaheim as a backup. I could see Philly.
Yeah, Philly needs a goalie. Buffalo needs a backup. There's places.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll want to sign anywhere as a backup. I think if he's going to be a backup, if I was Conroy, I'd say if someone offers you a backup deal, call me and I'll match it.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to cover on this?
I guess it depends how far you want to go, but I think the only other thing would be draft stuff, and I know you're going to cover that in the future, but I always just want to caution fans around this time of the year, especially with where the Flames are picking. Whoever comes in the draft is not an immediate solution. This is going to be a long-term 3, 4, 5 years before these guys make an impact. So I think if you think the Flames need bodies, you're not going to get them in the 2025 entry draft.
Yeah, I guess the other conversation with that has been the discussion of, reportedly Chicago or Utah are open for business on that number 3 or number 4 pick.
Sure, but I don't think the Flames have the asset to do anything.
No, and and everyone is saying, well, 18 and 32 and Rasmus should get it done. It's not going to. I don't the two questions that people are not answering for me on this is, why would Chicago and Utah in a top 5 draft be willing to give up a potential top 5 pick? That would tell you that this draft isn't that great.
Also, give it up for an old defenseman. I mean, you're bringing in a 28-year-old. The team that brings in Rasmus Andersson is a competitive team who, wants the 28-year-old defenseman and thinks they can win with him. I see no reason why Chicago parts with that asset for Andersson. They need that pick.
And why would Rasmus want to stay in Chicago?
Well, that's it. And I think if you're going to do something like that, you would need to make sure you could get him signed ahead of time. If I was going to give up that much for him, I'd want to know I had the deal done ahead of time. And you're right. I don't even think that his agent would answer the phone. I mean, he has 6-team no trade. I bet Chicago's on that no trade first off. And even if they're not, I wouldn't pick up the phone for an extension.
Yeah. The other thing is I don't see.
I mean, we've also seen fans think that Marner should come here. Like, there's some really silly crap out there.
Yeah. Marner's not coming here. The other thing is I don't see how that trade with Chicago with a top 5 pick does not involve a 2026 pick. Like it just there's three things to me that are untouchable right now. It's Parekh, it's Wolf, and it's that first pick next year. Because if you give that up and you lose the lottery and you lose Gavin McKenna, that is just not good.
That's it. And if you're a GM and you're wanting to allow Calgary to move up and take picks, you're going to want that pick from Calgary because it's one more shot at McKenna.
Yeah.
So if I'm the Flames, I'm trying to acquire a pick next year over this year. Yeah. If you really thought, you know what, I want to try and move up, I would try to talk to one of those guys and get their pick next year over this year.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk.
But yeah, we have to be honest here. I mean, the guys that take veterans are teams that are trying to win. And even if you look at when Calgary brought in Hamilton, it's because they thought they could win, right? When Calgary brought in Hamonic, they were in what they thought was a winning position. You don't do that when you're picking in the top 5, right? So I think we have to be honest with, yeah, maybe there's a trade to be made there, not for the first, but maybe, I don't know, Chicago wants Postal and they'll give you a 4th, but they're not, the Flames don't have the guns to move into one of the top 10 this year.
No, and nor should they.
No.
I just think that they need to, this is a draft, we'll talk about this more with Matt, but this is a draft that you're still stocking the cupboard for. And, you're not getting your franchise, you have to, the Flames have to do two things. They need elite talent and they have to stock the cupboard. And right now they're in stock the cupboard mode.
You need 18 players dressed every night.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, let's be honest. There's been some first-round players who never became elite, but have been very good NHLers. I look at a guy like Backlund. Never became an elite centerman, but is a very good Flame. And I think that's the kind of center you might find this year. There's also been fourth-round players, like a guy who wore number 13 here, who became very elite, right? Yeah. So I think we can't just look at first-round pick or bust. I mean, we talked earlier about, and I know he's a fourth-line guy, but Klapka, who the Flames found as a free agent, and is getting probably an NHL job next year. Like, I think every pick becomes valuable when you're where the Flames are. And who knows what will hit later on. I mean, I'm already looking at some of the picks from last year, and I think some of the second and third round guys look in some cases better than, Matvei Gradin, who the Flames brought in the last their last pick.
Yeah, that was a really good draft last year. And they need, it may not hit the same this year with this draft, but if they get, you have to keep.
And even if they don't get their number 1 center, maybe they get their Connor Zary or their next Michael Backlund, that, reliable 2-3 guy for a long time. And that's valuable too.
I think that's one of the other things that people have forgotten with Tampa Bay and Chicago and LA. Yes, they had the number. You're right, Tankus. They had a number 1 pick. They had a top 10. You're correct. But look at the draft that they had around that number 1 pick.
Yeah, and for a lot of these teams, even a team like, I go all the way back to Pittsburgh with Crosby. I mean, they made a lot of picks the year before and the year after. And don't just look at who didn't turn out, but also look at what that player turned into. A lot of times, well, we didn't hear about that guy. No, but they got a pick they used for something else. Yeah. So, young players become capital in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And it's not everybody. And I guess the other thing with top 10 is there are successes and there are players that don't turn out.
That's why there's 7 picks a year, because not everyone's going to turn out.
Yeah.
And for the players that don't, I look at someone like Adam Fox, right? Okay, maybe Adam Fox, doesn't turn out, but the Flames or doesn't want to play here, but the Flames were able to move that for, at the time, a pretty important package of Hanifin and Lindholm, right? Like, so maybe a guy doesn't become our elite center, but maybe he becomes a valuable piece to get something we need.
Yeah. And even Lindholm became the Lindholm trade turned out pretty well for the Flames. Yeah. It's turning out pretty well for the Flames so far.
Not turned out well for Boston. They're regretting that deal, but yeah, it turned out well for the Flames. That's the thing. Like, I don't think we can judge a guy on draft day. I think we really can't judge that until retirement day when you see what did that player turn into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like the NFL where you can evaluate right away because they expect players to play right away, or the NBA where they expect players. It's a development part of that.
Yep. And I think we have to remember too that any guy that comes up is likely going to need some time with the Wranglers.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's why, like I said, I think the Flames need to look at some stopgap players so they don't need to rush these guys up. You and I have talked about it. I still think Sam Bennett got rushed to the NHL, and we sort of heard in the Barn Burner review this week that, Craig Connor admitted there was some developmental mistakes with Bennett. And I think that's a good learning experience that, you know what, we need to give these guys the time, and maybe we need players that aren't forever a Flames, but are Flames for now.
There were 5 coaches that coached Sam Bennett during his time in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there was a lot of mistakes on what happened with Sam Bennett.
And I don't know that he was ready to be coached at the NHL level. Like, I think he needed some more development in a developmental league.
And a lot of the other thing that people don't, and I don't think that,
I think they were also often pushing him again because here's a thought experiment for you before we move off this, Kevin. Do you think it would have been different if he wasn't the highest pick in Flames history? Like, I think a lot of those coaches were trying to push him to be higher in the lineup than he should have been. If he was a 3rd round pick, I think he'd still be a Flame because I think he would have exceeded expectation.
Well, what they did in Florida is they put Sam Bennett into the second line. They played him. They said, just play your game with Huberdeau and just be yourself. Where the Flames were like, well, we need you to play here, and okay, we want to we won't force you.
Remember when Backlund first came in too, though, and they were trying to push him to be their elite sniper, and it took a few years. I mean, I remember talking on Fireside Chat when Backlund was young, and maybe it's time to move on from this guy. But he's found his role as a very key player for the Flames, but not that number 1 center.
Yeah, you have to let the player develop into what they turn out to be, and it may not look the way that you think. And I do think that we get enamored with numbers. And a lot of the time, like a guy like Johnny Gaudreau can just play his game because he's a 4th round pick and he can just live in obscurity because nobody's going to care about him. But a guy like some players that are picked in the top 10 are facing, there's an unfair expectation on them that, like, Kyle Turris was a number 2 pick in a pretty bad draft. Like, Kyle Turris is a solid NHLer, but I don't think in most drafts Kyle Turris is a number 2 pick, right? Just because someone was picked where Leon Draisaitl was picked doesn't mean he's going to turn out like Leon Draisaitl.
Yep.
And that's what I'm trying to. It's been one of my. I've been trying.
Neil Yakupov, Patrick Steffen, Rick DiPietro, Alex Daigle. Shall I continue?
Yeah. Like, there are,
and yet some of our best Flames were not 1st round picks of the Flames either. I mean, Jerome we traded for. Theo was not a 1st round pick. Like Johnny was not a 1st round pick. Giordano was a free agent.
Dustin Wolf, 7th round pick.
That's it. So I think sometimes we falsely put value on these guys, and it's the same thing we're talking about with Perek earlier. I see all these fans who are so excited. Oh my gosh, he needs to come up. He needs to be a number 1. He's the highest pick last year. That means he should be a number 2 guy. Why? Let him just develop. Pretend he's the 7th round pick. Pretend he was the 8th round pick. What would you have done with him then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess that's the only thing I want to leave on is I know it's exciting and I get it. People are excited. Fans are excited about the draft and taking these guys, but don't put false value on them because they were picked at 18 over 112. Look at who the player is and give them some time. I've said this how many times, Kevin? You've heard me say it. You want to watch the guy play? Go watch the Hitmen. You want to watch the guy play? Go watch the Wranglers. He doesn't need to be wearing a C for us to see these exciting players play. Let them develop.
Yes, exactly. I've been trying to say that too, and it's falling on deaf ears.
Go watch Brett Sutter and the Wranglers.
Exactly. Or the Abbotsford Canucks, who are in the Calder Cup final.
Well, for your audience, that makes sense. For Flames fans, it's going to be a heck of a commute. but they can watch them when they come to town.
It's a heck of a commute, even for Canucks fans.
I bet. Imagine imagine the traffic coming from Calgary.
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. All right,
but I'm sure they can listen to you tell them all about the traffic on the ones.
That's yes. Traffic on the ones. Which I start at 6:01 in the morning tomorrow.
Well, we should get you out of here so you can go to bed then.
Yeah, it's pretty soon. We'll leave it here. So tell us what you've got coming up.
So this week this past episode on Fireside Chat, which you can listen to now at firesidechat.ca or wherever you find your podcasts, we went through and profiled some of the players that we think are viable options for the Flames with their 18th and now 32nd pick. We know that now. We didn't know then. We went through about 10 players who we think might be guys that the Flames pick. We did a bit of a profile on them, and then also talked about some of the things you and I talked about today, including Andersson, the coaching shuffle, things like that. We will be back with our next episode, probably the second day of the draft. So that's the 28th of this month, as we will look at what the Flames did in the draft. So for those that don't know, this is the first remote draft. We didn't talk about that tonight, but they will not all be in one place. The GMs will be in their own buildings doing the draft, and round 1 takes place Friday, rounds 2 through 7 on Saturday, and we'll be doing a show shortly after that to talk about what the Flames do. So enjoy our draft preview, and then join us again after the draft at firesidechat.ca or wherever you find podcasts.
We will be doing Matt will join me we're going to talk about the Florida Panthers because he follows the Florida Panthers. And then we're going to look at the draft from the Flames, and we'll kind of break down some of the other guys some of the players that you talked about, and then some of the players that you didn't, that some of the Flames fans are kind of excited if you traded up for these come kind of where he's at with these guys. We'll kind of talk about that. And then we'll do an off-season recap as well, or a draft preview. We'll probably do that too. I'm just trying to plan things out for myself around the schedule. So stay tuned.
Are you guys doing a draft preview for the Canucks?
We'll figure that out. I haven't confirmed any schedule for that yet. So hopefully.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's like I said at the beginning, it's fun to talk hockey again.
It is, absolutely. And follow us on.
It's fun to talk hockey, but I'm also looking forward to taking a break again in July. Like, it's been good to do it, but it's nice to get that break again.
Yeah, it's a good 2 weeks to get it out of your system. And then after that, enjoy summer for 6 or 7 weeks.
That's right. And actually, we may be at rookie camp already first week of July. So, I mean, there's always something going on from this point on. Just a matter of how noteworthy it is to talk about.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you got your audio. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.